My state of Kansas, I can speak for what we know in Kansas, and we have identified 125 specific non-citizens that we can identify by name who have either successfully registered to vote or have attempted to register after we put our proof of citizenship law in place. So that's a significant number, and that's just Kansas. And so when people say there's no evidence, I say, well, obviously those people haven't been reading the newspapers, haven't been looking at the very significant numbers that just my little state has provided. Now, I don't know about the other 49 states. Maybe there's no voter fraud at all in the other 49, or maybe there is. But why wouldn't we want to find that out?
So it's interesting, you know, a lot of people will say that the issue here, though, Secretary, is actually not about voter fraud. It's really about voter suppression. And in your own state, the ACLU points that your own expert that you had put forth in a case that they have is that 6% of the voter pool in Kansas is African American. They represent, though, 18% of the people in your state who lack ID that might be required if you went ahead with voter fraud and wanted greater IDs, people who don't have a birth certificate or a passport. A study by the University of California and Bucknell had in states with strict voter ID laws, the turnout dropped significantly for minorities, but doesn't change at all for whites. Hispanics down 7% in strict voter ID states compared to others. Do you acknowledge that voter ID laws can suppress minority votes?
I will say that in Kansas, the evidence is strongly to the contrary, because that's been a subject of our litigation with the ACLU, and the ACLU is an opposing party in court right now, and they have mischaracterized the statement that you just made about them suggesting that there was disproportionate effect on African Americans. Look, in Kansas, for example, we put our photo ID law in place in 2012. So if you want to test the effect on participation, you'd look at the 2010 election and the 2014, which we did. In the rest of the country, participation dropped severely between 2010 and 2014. And in our neighboring states, it dropped severely. But in Kansas, it stayed flat, which suggested that Kansas was doing better over that period with the voter participation law.
And can you say that with minorities in Kansas specifically?
We have found no evidence that there was a disproportionate effect on minorities. Again, the effect was positive, but there's no evidence that minorities were unable to present a photo ID or unable to go to a government office and get a free one. And indeed, I find that argument almost racist when you suggest that a person's skin color affects his or her ability to carry an ID in a purse or a wallet or to go get a free one. It's a baffling argument, and I don't see, at least in my state, the facts to support it. Now, maybe there is evidence in other states, and that's one of the things the Commission will be looking at, too. This argument about voter depression or suppression of voter rates will also be something we'll look at. So we'll see where the facts point.